welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into something pretty crucial for, well, anyone steering a project or a business, the pivot. We've looked at some material that honestly kind of reframes it, not as, failure, but more like a smart, strategic move.
Yeah, a course correction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our goal today, really dig into what a pivot actually is, how you spot when one might be needed, and maybe some practical ways to handle that shift without, losing all your steam.
And I think for anyone listening, someone who's always trying to understand things better, gain new perspectives, this whole idea of adapting, changing course.
Yeah.
It probably rings a bell.
Oh, definitely.
Whether it's that business idea that's just not quite hitting the mark, or a project that's run into some walls, even a career path, maybe. This deep dive should give a structured way to think about those moments.
Moving beyond just the word pivot to what you can actually do.
Right. Actionable stuff and some examples that make it feel real.
Yeah. And the source we're drawing from today really paints it nicely, not as a dead end, but like finding a better road on the map. A smarter route based on what you now know.
It gives a solid framework for understanding the why and the how. Okay, so let's jump in. This word pivot. What are we really talking about here?
Well, the first thing to get straight, I think, is that it's not about throwing everything away, not starting over from absolute zero.
Right.
It's more of an adjustment, a change, sure, but one that's, informed by everything you've learned up to that point. Feedback, customer actions, maybe even just realizing where your strengths really lie.
That feels important. It's not admitting defeat, is it?
Not at all. It's strategic. It's learning. And there's definitely a range here.
So not always some massive tear down the house kind of change.
No, exactly. Our material points out it can be smaller things, like maybe tweaking what you offer, changing your marketing message slightly.
Or, yeah, it can be bigger. Shifting your whole business model, maybe going after a different audience entirely. But the core idea is the same. Use what you have, to aim for something more promising.
And, the examples are kind of stunning when you think about it.
Oh, definitely. So many huge companies we know today, they pivoted, sometimes drastically.
Like Instagram, right? Didn't start as a photo app.
Nope. It was originally called Bourbon, I think, a location check-in app, more like Foursquare. But they saw users love the photo filters, so they pivoted hard.
Wow. And Slack?
Slack came out of a gaming company. They built this internal communication tool while making a game called Glitch. The game, well, it didn't make it, but the tool
Became Slack.
And Netflix started mailing DVDs. That was already a pivot from the Blockbuster model, but then they saw streaming coming. Another huge pivot.
Okay, those examples really land. It makes pivoting seem less like a desperate measure and more like, well, almost normal for success stories.
Exactly. It suggests they were paying attention. They saw something wasn't quite working with plan A.
So what were they seeing? What are those signals, those warning signs that maybe it's time to think about changing course?
That's the key question, isn't it? Our source lays out a few big ones. One obvious one is just stalled growth. You're putting in the effort, the hours, everything, but the needle just isn't moving.
Yeah, pushing that rock uphill.
Right. Or maybe you're getting people to look, but they're not sticking around. Low engagement, poor conversion rates, people aren't really connecting, or they're not becoming, actual customers.
That suggests a mismatch somewhere.
Definitely. Another thing, maybe a bit softer, but just as important, is enthusiasm. Yours, your team's, even your audience's. If that passion is starting to fade, that can be a really telling sign that something's off.
That internal compass feeling.
And then there are the external factors. Big market shifts, new technology changing the game.
Like streaming for Netflix.
Precisely. Or maybe the problem you initially set out to solve, well, maybe it's not really a burning problem for people anymore, or maybe someone else is solving it much better.
So it's like keeping tabs on a bunch of different dials.
Yeah, constantly monitoring. And the crucial thing, which our material really stresses, is that seeing these signs isn't failing.
Right, it's not admitting defeat.
It's being observant. It's collecting data, whether that's hard numbers or just that gut feeling backed by evidence and being willing to act on it. It actually takes courage to say, okay, this isn't the path, let's adjust.
Yeah, it really does. Which leads perfectly into the mindset, doesn't it? Because there is that stigma, that feeling of, oh, I failed if plan A doesn't work out.
There absolutely is. That feeling like you messed up or you should have known.
Yeah.
But the perspective we're exploring here is, well, much more empowering. Think of it like real-time learning.
Okay.
The world isn't static, right? Markets change, customers evolve, you learn things you didn't know at the start. So
Yeah.
adjusting based on that new info, that's smart, that's resilience. It's not a weakness.
I like framing it as learning. Like a scientist, the hypothesis wasn't quite right, but the experiment still gave you valuable data.
Exactly. That data tells you where to go next. It's not failure, it's information. You're still aiming for the destination, maybe, but you've found a better route.
A scenic detour? Maybe even.
Could be. And honestly, our resource argues that this ability to pivot, this flexibility, it's a sign of being smart, aware, and ultimately more likely to succeed long term. It's a core skill, not just a plan B.
Okay, that's a powerful reframe. So we get what it is, why it might happen, the mindset. Let's get tactical. How do you actually do it without, crashing the car? How do you pivot and keep moving?
Right, the practical steps. And the material offers some good pointers here. First off, and this is critical, get really, really clear on why. Why the pivot?
Don't just jump because something feels off.
Exactly. It shouldn't be impulsive. Our resource suggests asking some tough questions. What specifically isn't working? Not just it's not working, but what?
Drill down.
Yeah. What are customers or your audience consistently telling you? What's the key insight you've gained? The pivot needs to come from that understanding, not just restlessness.
Okay, so clarity on the why. What's next?
Defining the new direction. Once you know why you're changing, you need to figure out where you're going.
Makes sense. And again, some guiding questions help here, right? Like, what's the new problem I want to tackle? Or, who's my audience now?
Mm-hmm. And also, importantly, how does this new direction still connect with my core strengths, my long-term vision? You don't want to pivot into something totally random if it doesn't align with who you are or what you're good at.
Right, it needs to feel authentic still.
Yeah.
So you've got the why and the what next. Now, what about all the stuff you've already built?
Good point. And this is where people can trip up, thinking they need a total clean slate.
Throw it all out.
Yeah, but the advice is, don't. Preserve what works. Our source uses a great phrase, take the gold with you.
I like that. So what's the gold? What kind of assets should you hang on to?
Well, think about it. Any loyal customers or dedicated followers you have, huge asset. Keep them. Any content you've created that's still valuable or could be repurposed, existing systems, tools you've set up that still work, even your brand identity, if it can be adapted.
So it's not necessarily a full rebrand or starting from scratch technologically.
Often not. Think about that software example shifting from B2C to B2B. They likely kept a lot of their core code, their engineering team's expertise. They just refocused the application and the marketing.
Okay, so salvage the good stuff. That makes the pivot less daunting, I guess. What else? Communication seems like it would be key.
Absolutely crucial. If you have people invested in audience, clients, your team, you need to be transparent.
Tell them what's happening.
Yes. Explain the why, tell them what's changing, but also what's staying the same. Manage expectations about the future. Honesty here builds trust, even during a shift. Hiding it just creates confusion or anxiety.
Yeah, people appreciate being kept in the loop.
Yeah.
Okay, so clarity, new direction, keep the gold, communicate clearly. Anything else?
One final, really important piece. Take action.
Don't get stuck planning.
Exactly. Analysis paralysis is the enemy here. The advice is to make a decisive move. Test the new direction. Launch something, even if it's small. A new offer, a piece of content reflecting the new focus. Update your website messaging.
Like a minimum viable pivot.
Yeah, something like that. Get something out there to get real feedback on the new direction. Momentum comes from doing, not just thinking. Like turning that sailboat, you got to actually adjust the sails and catch the new wind.
Okay, that's a really practical sequence. So you've got the theory, the mindset, the steps. Let's maybe look at a few more quick examples to see how this plays out in different ways.
Yeah, the resource gives a good mix.
Yeah.
It shows it's not just one type of situation. Like a coach, maybe, started with one-on-one clients, right?
Okay.
But then realized to scale, to reach more people, they needed something else. So they pivot to creating digital courses, group programs, still coaching, but different model.
Leveraging technology for scale. Makes sense. What else?
Or think about a startup. Maybe they built a really broad social platform. Just, connect with anyone.
Like the early days of many platforms.
Right. But then they notice one specific feature, maybe connecting people around, niche hobbies, is getting all the engagement.
So they zoom in.
Exactly. They pivot to focus entirely on that niche, double down on what's clearly resonating. That's focusing on traction.
Following the energy, following the data.
Or even a freelancer, maybe. Starts out doing general graphic design, let's say, but realizes they could command higher rates or enjoy the work more by specializing in tech startup branding. So they rebrand, change their portfolio, target that specific niche.
That's a pivot towards a higher value market.
Yep. And one more, maybe a content creator. Maybe they built a huge following on, say, Platform X, but then Platform Y emerges and it's clearly better for reaching their ideal audience or offers better monetization. They might pivot their main focus to the new platform.
Adapting to the changing digital landscape.
Exactly. All different scenarios, different scales, but the common thread, strategic adaptation, staying aligned, finding a way to keep growing or become more sustainable.
It really drives home that pivoting is about being responsive and strategic, not just flailing. Okay, so as we start to wrap this up, what's the single biggest thing you hope listeners take away from this deep dive on pivoting?
I think the absolute core message is stop seeing pivot as a dirty word or a synonym for failure.
Yeah.
Instead, see it as proof you're paying attention, proof you're engaged, observant, and crucially adaptable. It's often just a necessary step on the path to something better.
A sign of health, almost. And maybe remember those key ingredients for doing it well.
Right. Pivot from understanding, know your why. Pivot with clarity, know your new where. And pivot with action, keep moving, don't wait for perfection.
Movement over perfection. I like that.
And maybe just a final thought to leave folks with, change is okay. Seriously. It's not just permissible. It's often the very thing that unlocks growth and doors you didn't even know were there. Don't be afraid to consider it.
So for everyone listening, as you go about your own work, your projects, your careers, maybe just keep these ideas in your back pocket. Think about how adapting, shifting, learning in real time might apply to you. Stay curious, stay flexible. Thanks for diving deep with us today.